Good morning. In our story today, we meet the disciples and Jesus immediately following Peter's announcement that Jesus was the Messiah. They'd been following him around the countryside. They knew something amazing was going on with him, but this was the first moment in the Gospel of Mark where they get it. This is him. This is the one that they've been talking about for thousands of years, the Messiah, the promised one who's coming, who is going to make the world right again. What an incredible realization that must have been for Peter and the rest of the disciples. They'd chosen very wisely. They'd thrown their lot in with the right one. They had picked the Messiah and they had chosen his side, so this was probably going to be really good. Everyone would know that they were the first to believe in him. As his inner circle, they should probably get some perks for walking around as God's friends. Then, Jesus throws an obscene amount of cold water on the entire thing, snapping Peter out of his revelry. I'm the Messiah, but it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be anything like what one would imagine the Messiah is going to be like. The Messiah is going to be rejected, suffer, and die before any of the good stuff happens. Now for Peter, this sudden possibility of great things comes crashing down, and the direct translation of what he yells at Jesus is, "Shut up." It's too much. He can't take what this could possibly mean. If what he's saying is true, they've thrown their lot in with a Messiah who's about to suffer and be killed. They're going to walk right into the path of suffering and possible death. That was more than they could wrap their heads around, and really, it's hard for us to understand as well. Jesus sets him straight, and he begins telling the whole crowd, I'm going to be crucified, and you are going to have to take up your cross as well. It's not the good news the disciples wanted. Honestly, I think for most of us now, that's still not necessarily the good news that we desire. See, Peter, and like most of us, we want salvation to come easily. Can't our faith just kind of zap us up out of the hardness of the world? Get us away from the stress of bills and sickness and worry about your family? Can't it just make it all okay? Jesus says, And the truth is, we know that. The reality is, no matter how you understand why it's here, there's terrible things that happen in the world all the time. Sin is. And we can try to wish our way out of it through our faith, or we can try to engage this crazy Messiah who says you have to carry a cross to truly gain your life. No one can avoid suffering completely. And if we're foolish enough to try, we'll find ourselves in such isolation that we're simply going to create a different kind of pain for ourselves. Lives without love, being isolated in ourselves, ignoring what could have been made better. Or if we refuse to engage or deny it, we just allow ourselves to remain in its power. But in the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, we're taught that the salvation God brought to this world works through what is in the world. We are saved, not by being brought up and out of and beyond the pain, but by being so loved completely that we can move forward into the world, able to bear it, and still find hope. Still see holy possibility in the very creation that seems so broken. I've shared with the congregation before that when I was in a previous life, I suffered from anorexia. When I went to seminary, I thought that I could just not deal with it. I would go and learn and follow God's call, and that would just take care of itself somehow. I'm not sure if any of you know this. That's not how getting better from anorexia works. I was brought to my knees having to decide if I was going to sacrifice answering God's call or allowing myself to remain in this cycle of self-abuse and suffering. Through the saints and angels who were brought into my life, I was given help and treatment. My life changed. I eat all the time. I find joy in it. But it only happened once I came to realize that God wasn't calling me dependent on my ability to heal from this, for my ability to overcome and transcend this horrible center of suffering that lived within myself. The transformation came when I realized that I had to pick up the cross, carry the weight of this horrible thing that had been with me, and move on, and to seek out the God who had been calling me to them all of my life. I wasn't supposed to be a perfect person who transcended the pain. I was supposed to be a pastor who carried the cross of the pain that I'd experienced so I could meet others in the same place. So, probably not the good news that we're hoping for, but there is good news in this. Don't give up. God will help you bear the weight, and you can change those things that are painful and haunt you into something amazing and transformative. Picking up your cross is not carrying the weight of guilt and shame on your shoulders, but rather the ability to move forward in hope, even while knowing that the world is what it is. That is salvation. So friends, we're saved through and in spite of our suffering, and God will bring new life into this broken world. And if we dare to be willing to be honest about where we are and what we need, to be honest about what we've been through and what we have to offer one another, we can create something amazing. A community where we are who we are, we're seen for who we are, and we are encouraged to pick up our crosses and have a companion for the journey. If we deny ourselves in this way, it means that we shift our priorities to be in harmony with what Jesus told us in those two great commandments, to love God and to love your neighbor. May we create this space. And friends, whatever struggles you have, don't allow them to paralyze you and stop you from answering God's call in your life. The power of God makes what the world calls broken and weak strong. It makes us, broken and weak as we may seem sometimes, harbingers of light, disciples of Christ, repairers of the breach. May we be so bold. Amen.